Hello to everyone, I am Margarita. In this video I want to show you how to sew this super easy mini slit skirt. You can learn how to sew invisible zipper and 2 different ways to sew a slit. You need a fabric, I use tweed with lurex, invisible zipper and medium interfacing. You also need a pattern, I leave a link down below. You can print it in A4 or A0 format. I assembled the pattern because I have A4, but first I cut out the frame on the paper. On the back you will find the indicated sizes. To make sure it's printed correctly, you have to measure the scale, and let's get started. First, cut your size. Place the pattern correctly on the fabric and add seam allowances. I usually add 1 cm, but in this case it's 1.5 because the fabric unravels. Only the waist seam is 1 cm. After you cut the skirt, you need to interfacing part of the fabric for the front and back facing. Start with the front part of the skirt, and we have to sew on the overlock front seams. This is an important step to not damage the fabric. Then place the left front panel over the front center and mark the slit. Start the seam at the waist and finish to the place of the slit. We also sew the right panel to the center front, and this time we sew the entire seam. Press the 2 seams open and iron the slit. For a better result, you can press the seam allowance with your fingers. To complete the slit, sew along the entire edge approximately at 1 cm. Now we start with the back And first we start with the darts. When you put the pins, be careful to match the two sides. Iron darts to center back. Interface the place of the zipper with a width of 2 cm. Measure the zipper and mark where the seam begins. The place of the zipper should be smaller, so you can sew it more easily. Sew center back to the zipper place and iron the seam all once open. I usually sew the overlock seam all once at this point, but you can sew them in advance, in the same way we did with the front panels. Pin right to right side on front and back, and if you have a square like me, you have to match it carefully. Make a seam on the wrong side, starting from the top to the bottom. Finish the edge of the seam on the overlock and make sure you don't stretch the edge of your work. Iron the seam allowance to the back and make sure the squares match if you have them, of course. Now it's the turn of the zipper. You have to open it, turn the skirt to the wrong side and pin one side of the zipper to one right side of the back. We use the zipper fold. Make a first stitch to the outside of the zipper, sew to the end of the zipper area and make a second stitch as close as possible to it. Now you repeat on the other side, close the zipper and place it, and make the first stitch. Open the zipper to the end and make the second stitch as close as possible to the teeth. Then close the zipper and make sure both sides are sewn perfectly. Press the zipper and now you have invisible zipper on the skirt. Now make the facing to sew it to the skirt. Place back facing to front facing, right to right side, and sew the side seam. Then press the seam once open. Finish the entire bottom edge by overlock stitching. Follow the finished facing and mark the front center. Do the same with the skirt, mark the center of the front at the waist. Match the two center fronts to sew the facing to the waist. Do the same for the side seams. Place right to right side and sew all around the waist. Stitch 1 cm along the top edge. Turn the facing right side up and stitch on 1 mm from the edge. The seam-all ones are also on top and we sew them. To finish the edge at the zipper, turn facing to the wrong side, place the edge on the zipper and sew as close as possible to the teeth. Turn the right side and carefully remove the corner. If necessary, you can cut it from inside. Mark the edge of the facing into the other side of the zipper and repeat the steps to finish the other edge. Press the corners and the entire waist so the facing is not visible on the right side. Top stitch along the entire waist at 1 cm, but be careful to not sew the zipper teeth. Match side seams and pin the facing and sew right over the seam, so the facing will not come out from the right side. Overlock the entire hem, press it to 1 cm and top stitch starting from one edge of the slit to the other. And so the skirt is finished. I promised to show another option for sewing a slit, but you need 1 cm wide ribbon interfacing the place of the slit and sew the front panels in the same way. In this case, we sew the seam allowance together on the overlock and the seam ends at the slit. Press the hem at 1 cm and top stitch. Sew a ribbon over the end of the seam from the wrong side. Put the top panel right to the seam at the same way I show. Open the seam allowance, fold to one side of the ribbon and sew along the inside edge. Repeat on the other side, starting from the bottom edge. Press the ribbon inside to not visible from right side. Cut the end of the ribbon to 1 cm and fold it inside. Press again and top stitch all around the outer edge of the ribbon. And that's the result.